Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to tonight's Freedom Thinking Community Group. The date is the 10th of December 2024. Apologies about yesterday. Today's Tuesday. Normally we do these on a Monday night. But due to a family commitment, my mother was singing a choral thing for Christmas and I couldn't miss it. So I went and supported my mum, along with Lucia and Jen and the rest of my family. And hopefully Jen's coming to join me later on. She's busy trying to get Lucia to go to sleep, which is no small feat. Yeah, just thank you everybody who's managed to make it. I can see Tuesday night isn't a particularly good night for people. But no, thank you for everybody who's managed to make it. Yeah, this is a via donation thing. If anybody wishes to make a donation, it is so appreciated because it helps Jenny and I keep going. If you find any benefit from this, if you're watching this in a replay, perhaps you've clicked on this in YouTube or whatever, if you find benefit from our videos, would you consider making a donation? Our PayPal ID is info@freedomthinking.co.uk. If you wish to have our bank details, if you want to get like our PIN number and bank card details, just drop us an email at info@freedomthinking.co.uk. I won't fall for it. Yeah, thank you very much in advance, and thank you to everybody who's donated already. We really, really appreciate it. It keeps us going. It keeps us going, and we want to be able to keep on doing these groups and these videos. So yeah, without further ado, I have got something I wanted to talk about. It kind of relates to the last couple of weeks that we've spoken to. And then I'd like to speak to something that I just had a conversation with earlier on to somebody about, if that's all right. And then I'd love to hear some comments from you lot, any questions, reflections, observations. Somebody else is just popping in. Any questions, reflections, observations. I like these calls to be specific. I like them to be for the people who can make it online. If you can't make it online and you would like to pose a question that you'd like us to talk to, perhaps you can't make the night that we do these things and you watch on replay, drop us an email, info@freedomthinking.co.uk. Got an insect. And also, if you would like your names adding to either a WhatsApp or a Telegram group, where we are a bit better than going on Facebook. We're a bit quicker, a bit sharper than Facebook. And we let people know about what Freedom Thinking's doing, what we're up to, any events that we're holding and things like that. Drop us an email, info@freedomthinking.co.uk. And we will put your name, yeah, no, we won't, and drop us and give us your telephone number and we will add you to the list. So yeah, I think that's it. I think that's the businessy side of things over. Oh, and also if you could like, comment and subscribe. All right. Thank you. What is it they say? Smash that button or whatever. Just say stuff and click and like us. All right. Just like us. Like me. Right. Let's make a start. Tonight, I wanted to talk a bit about, there was something that, hey, here's my guest speaker. You just caught us just we're about to start.
Listening to you set on the announcement.
Do you want to turn the monitor on?
Doesn't work.
All right. Yeah, I just wanted to talk a bit to something that Divyesh has been mentioning the last couple of weeks. I hope he can make it on, or perhaps Div, if you're watching this on catch up. And I know somebody dropped they dropped a message in the comments on one of our videos regarding what Div was saying, and Div's comment was something that somebody had said to him. They were creating a video around inspired by Divyesh, and the video was high intellect, low consciousness. I just want to talk a little bit about that. I just want to talk about it, what that means from certainly my point of view. I'll let Jen speak from her point of view. What does that even mean? Because it can be something where we can look at, we can hear that comment and we can start to formulate an identity out of it that perhaps doesn't actually exist. What the heck's going on here? What was that?
That's weird. Shared your screen or something.
I didn't touch anything. Well, we can start to formulate an identity out of it. Our thing is doing something
Really?
rather funny.
Well,
Oh,
Who's Amanda?
don't know.
Two Amandas drawn on a board.
Amanda, do you mind just unmuting yourself and just letting us know where you are?
Hiya, Dave. I think there's two Amandas,
There is.
but I'm not doing anything to my laptop, so I'm not quite sure what's going on with the sticky notes and the dooberies.
All right. Other Amanda. Hi, Amanda. How you doing? Nice to see you anyway. Look, thank
I'm
you.
all right, darling. I'm all right.
Good. Other Amanda, do you mind unmasking yourself?
She's gone. She's gone.
Amanda Seeds, are you still there?
Amanda Seeds is still here.
Good. Oh, other Amanda's gone. I don't know
she
what
did
that was.
unmute at the same time.
Hello.
It's a family affair.
Hello, family affair. All right. Thank you for coming. Yeah, I don't know what that was. It was pop-ups coming up.
I think you're just a bit nervous in case it's there. It's
Well,
like the last time we got bombed.
I will get started, but yeah, Wendy was there once. We got bombed. It was quite homoerotic. It,
Yeah, if that's your homo persuasion, yeah, I suppose so. But
it was a good one. Yeah, so I'm a little bit nervous when things start popping up now on screen, when people come in who I'm not entirely sure who they are, and things start popping up on screen. Yeah, going back to the point being this high intellect, low consciousness. Now, Div mentioned this a fair few times, and somebody in the comments mentioned it. Right, I think we need to get rid of somebody.
I won't let anyone else
Don't
in,
let
unless
anybody
I
else
recognise
in.
the name.
Did that say KKK?
I don't know.
I think it did. Right, nobody else is coming in unless we recognise the names. Sorry about that, everybody. Starting to get a feel for this now.
I'm sure it's password protected though.
Is it? It is password protected.
What's this? Oh,
Right,
okay.
go on.
High consciousness. No, low consciousness, high intellect.
Yes. No. Sorry, everyone. We're not letting any more in
Unless I recognise the name.
unless we recognise it. Sorry, some other people are trying to get in. We're trying to be bombed again. We're trying to be bombed again. Get professional. Get your head on the game. I think when we hear that high intellect, low consciousness, it can kind of create an impression that there is something wrong with us. That perhaps where we might create an enemy out of an aspect of our being, i.e. the intellect. When we might start to see the intellect as something that is a bit of an enemy, that is not good for us, that really is something we should be kind of overcoming, or what's the word? Trying to dismantle or to get rid of. I personally don't see the intellect like that. I see the intellect as a wonderful tool. It's the means by which we as human beings have managed to solve many, many problems in this world. It's why we have lighting. It's why we have the internet. It's why we have laptops. It's why we have mobile phones. We see a problem and we use our intellect to figure out the problem. It's a wonderful, wonderful tool. It's not the source of life. It's not who and what we actually are. It's the means by which that we get to think and to create in this world. Wonderful thing. Wonderful, wonderful thing.
Trying again.
Do you want to turn that off?
Well, no, I'll just leave it on for the
Okay.
early bit because people
Yeah.
sometimes message me.
Yeah. But this low consciousness bit, I want to talk a little bit about this low consciousness bit. You know, low consciousness, when I hear that, I can see in my mind, it could be very, very easy for me to associate that statement, oh, high intellect, low consciousness, as though my consciousness is at a level that is lower than, say, other human beings. Like perhaps you could liken it to being closer to that of something like plankton. Yeah, it's like we could very quickly develop the idea that, oh, my low intellect means I'm unevolved. I'm not as evolved as other human beings. My low consciousness. But that's not really true. You know, to me, low consciousness, what low consciousness means is it means I haven't realized something. That's all. But it doesn't take anything away from who and what I actually am. It doesn't make me any less spiritual. It doesn't make me any less beautiful. It doesn't make me any less amazing. It doesn't make me any less perfect. It just means I haven't realized the simplicity of life, and I've been trying to figure it out with my intellect. Now, the intellect can't discover life. And really, when we look at the three principles and we listen to this conversation, or we listen to Sid, what Sid spoke about at great depth was he spoke about the nature of life itself. I always remember my sister, she wrote a beautiful thing where she received a message and she wrote it down. And in this message, it said, it is your, what word was it? It was your task. It is your task to realize that you have life. Within this message was the statement, it is your task to realize you have life. Now, listening to that, it could be, well, what frigging use is that? Of course I've got life. I'm here. I'm listening right now. I've got all these 1,000,001 problems going on. Of course I've got life. If I didn't have life, I wouldn't have all these problems. But the magic lies in the discovery of life. Because when we start to discover life, we start to discover something that isn't man-made. We start to discover something that its origin isn't one based in matter, in a physical world. We start to discover something that is so fundamental, so wonderful, so inexplicable, so marvelous, so magical. So perfect. And it's who and what we actually are. You want to say something?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I think when you said we were going to speak about that tonight, the thing that occurred to me was that you can have a very, very high intellect and a very low consciousness in terms of how you use it, or you can have an incredibly high intellect and an incredibly high level of consciousness, and then how you use your intellect will be probably to serve the world and to help the world, whereas from a lower state you're actually probably doing negative things. So it felt like that actually a high intellect could be somebody at any level of consciousness. It'll be then that will determine then how we use it and what we do in life. So I do wonder, I think Div was saying he's not listened to the talks. He doesn't know what actually that was about. That was just the title. That's what occurred to me when you said that statement.
Yeah, and somebody else also posted on the
Oh,
chat.
okay.
Yeah. What do you want to say, love?
I was just talking about levels of consciousness earlier today with somebody, and I love that image of a glass elevator in a multi-story building, and you're down in the basement level in the glass elevator, you can see outside, and all you see is carpeting and other doors, and maybe it's dark and musty, I don't know. And then you go up a level at street level, and you might see people in the lobby bustling around, and then you go up. The higher you go up, the wider your perspective opens up. And I think you said something similar, Dave, like you have more options when your consciousness is higher. I know these are silly words, higher, deeper, wider, whatever, but that feels like a very practical. I would say most of us have probably been in a glass elevator once or twice, maybe, or at least seen one on TV, and you kind of know just that experience of the higher you go. Like you could say, oh, look, there's clouds over that way. There's a storm coming. Right here, it looks beautiful, but we wouldn't have been able to see that when we're on the first floor, second floor. You can't see the clouds that are 30 miles away or whatever. Um, and so it could change your afternoon if you said, oh, well, we're not going to bother going to the beach. I could see the storms coming from, whatever. Just it gives more choice, more options when your consciousness is higher, wider, more open, as opposed to consumed with I'm in the basement and I only see 5 feet in front of me, and my choices are limited. So that's what occurred to me when you're talking about consciousness and levels.
Yeah, definitely, love.
Yeah, I think I guess as well as you go up, everything becomes less and less. It gets smaller and smaller, so you're moving away from details. And you often say the devil's in the details, and I think from one level you're literally in the content, and the more awareness we seem to have, we go away from content and much more drop back into that space of whatever consciousness is. Because I think I think it's a helpful description to be able to talk about levels. And I think Sid spoke like, there's infinite depth, infinite levels to consciousness, but consciousness of itself, in and of itself, is already openness. Like, can't be high or low, it just is. But I feel as a human being, we can get a sense or a feel when we start to see that we can be living in a like small awareness and everything feels difficult, and then when we're in an open space things feel easier and more accessible to us. So I found that as a helpful description. But like when you're saying, like it's made up, this idea of levels of consciousness, because we're already it, but for our thinking creating the idea that we're somewhere else in it. So it's the ego really that goes up and down in consciousness in a way, or how attached we are to ego.
Yeah, it's
maybe
that creates the illusion of up and down in consciousness,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. So it's like I just wanted to talk a bit about that, because people can say I don't get the principles. I don't get it. Well, you don't need to get it. You're already it. There's nothing to get. We are already the magic of what Sid described as universal mind. What is universal mind? Well, universal mind is the intelligence behind life itself. In many traditions around the world, they speak about universal mind. I think it's the first Hermetic principle. Everything is mental. Now, are we talking about your mental or my mental or whoever's mental? No, mentalness. Mental as in mind. Everything is mind. Everything is God mind. As God thinks, so it experiences. That's why in many kind of traditions it says things like on earth as it is in heaven, as above, so below. You know, some people describe the universe as being holographic. How does a hologram work? Every single aspect of the picture is housed within the little parts that make up the hologram, which creates this holographic image, like a fractal. What's a fractal like? Have you ever seen those? Like, look at a fern. A fern, it grows like a fern, but then every single frond that comes off a fern looks like a fern. And if you look closely at those fronds, they have fronds that look like a fern. Fractals. Well, that's very similar to ourselves. It's the same principle as the universal mind creating body in which it gets to experience as an individualized location of consciousness, which is what we all are. Again, there's nothing to get. We are that. And then there's this infinite creative capacity that courses through this universal mind. There has to be. And this universal mind infinitely creates. And guess what we do? We create. We create experience, we create behaviors, we create things. And every single thing we've ever created came from mind. It was a potential that already existed, that we discovered from within ourselves and brought forward and brought into the physical world, created it into the physical world. You know, this, to start to gain insight into the principles is to start to understand reality itself. That is why it is such an important conversation. That is why it's such a massive conversation. But that consciousness that is life itself doesn't go up and down. It is just consciousness like an ocean. But the ocean can wave in any way it wishes. There is no limit to the way that the ocean can wave. It can create small wave or big wave and everything in between. This is why when people come to this, you know, I personally came to this I came to this because I suffered. I came to this because, well, actually, to this day, it blows my mind how I came to this. But
I'm just going to move access.
yeah, you do that, love. But I initially came to this because I was suffering. And it was when I gained insight into the nature of what Sid was pointing to, because when he's pointing to it, when he speaks about mind, consciousness, thought, he's not speaking about three different things. He's speaking about what appear to be three attributes to the force of life itself. You know, everybody, like I say this all the time, but everybody's mesmerized by life. That's going on. What about this? What about that? They did this. He said that. I did that. Fucking hell. And that happened to me in the past. And then, oh, I'm worried about the future. Blah, 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 blah. Caught up in the details of life. But very, very few people do stop to ask the question and reflect upon the point about life itself. What's living the birds? What's living the insects? What's living the plant kingdom? What's living the fungal kingdom? What's living the animal kingdom? What's living human beings? What is living? What is life? What is it to experience? How does experience come about? What's it born from? Who are we? because the magic of life lies in the discovery of life itself, not how life is showing up. The devil's in the details, as Jen just said. It's a distraction. It's a distraction from the discovery of who and what we actually are. And we hear so many people, they like, look, I'll listen to this and I'll get interested, but first of all, I need to solve all these problems. You know, it's a bit of a luxury that you get to experience what you experience, Dave, Jen, whatever, that you get to reflect on life itself. It's a bit of a luxury that you get to do that. What a luxury. But no, it is the most important thing that we can actually discover. Because when we start to discover that, it puts things into their rightful place. For example, the intellect. You know, all of a sudden the intellect isn't who and what we are. It isn't something that we necessarily need to be proud of or berate. It's just an aspect of spirit. It's nothing to be put down. It's nothing to destroy. Same with the ego. You know, if somebody gets to experience beyond their ego, beyond their intellect, and when I say beyond their intellect, I mean the space which the intellect cannot create. Because the intellect can create all kinds of spaces, but it cannot create the space that exists before it, the space from which it emerges. It cannot create that. But people have the capacity to drop into that space before the intellect, and what they discover is peace. What they discover is perfection. What they discover is love. And I don't care who the hell's listening right here, right now. This applies to you. Because if you're listening to this, you're a human being, unless you're a bot that's just AI and everything, I don't know, monitoring. But if you're listening to this and you are a human being, this absolutely applies to you. And there's something that takes place when an individual starts to become aware of that space. They will find an interest in something that has no end, and life suddenly becomes very, very exciting. It brings to life scripture. All those things that we've heard in the past that we thought were nice beliefs, you listen to them and you start to realize, oh no, they were trying their best to describe something. They were trying their best to describe something about life itself. But to me, before I had my discovery, it just sounded like something I had to believe in, which was a wonderful belief. But to realize that the words that they were trying to use were trying to convey a message to guide people back into the point. There was a thing that Jesus repeated over and over again in the book of Thomas. For those who have ears to hear, let them hear. For those who have ears to hear, let them hear. You see, this conversation won't touch everybody, but it touches those who are ready to hear. Again, no judgment. No judgment. No probs, love. Manda, you go and sort out what you need to sort out, love. No judgment. You know, if somebody isn't ready to listen to this, that's cool. That just means you haven't finished playing your game yet. And you're still fully in your game and you're enjoying playing your game. Enjoy playing the game. Enjoy playing the game of life. You can't get it wrong. It doesn't make you any less evolved, any less spiritual, like we said before. It doesn't make you any less perfect. It just means that you haven't finished with your experience yet. And that's perfect. And trust me, when you touch that space and you awaken to higher frequency, higher dimensional self, it doesn't mean that you don't have the capacity to enter into those weird fucking lost spaces as well. I do. You know, it never stopped me actually being human. And I feel that so much of the time people are trying to escape being human. You know, they're trying to escape this human experience. It's not what it's about.
The reason I'm laughing is just before Dave left the room and Lucia went, Daddy's a human.
Did she?
I said, he is. I said, are you a human? She went, no, I'm going to be a mum to Raya. And I said, yeah, we're human beings. We're human. But I think she thinks, because it's human, I think she thinks it means man.
All right.
But it was just really funny. That's why I giggled when I said,
I like that.
Daddy's a human.
I like that.
So mum to Rhea, so that's not human.
Apparently not.
Or it's a specific silo of life. I got it. All right. I'm feeling
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Bless her.
The other thing she was saying is, I'm awake. I'm awake. I want to go upstairs. And then within about 4 minutes, she was fast asleep.
Yeah, being human is being spiritual. People often say, I'm trying to find my spiritual self. What's looking for that? You know, what is this consciousness that is going in search of spirit? Because if you look at what consciousness and spirit are, you'll realize they're the same thing.
Reminds me of what I've heard that Eckhart Tolle recounts is his spiritual awakening on some park bench somewhere when he was morbidly depressed by his report. And then he said, I'm so sick of myself. And he said, who's the self that's sick of that self? And that was like a real, like for him, a big, huge, eye-opening thing. Like, I am observing this protoplasm, this piece of humanity living in the world and trying to make his way in the world. But there's something that is deeper, whatever, something that is more core, that is well and healthy, and really feels bad for this guy that's walking around feeling bad about himself. And yeah, I don't know, Jenny, do you have any, this is really way off. Do you have any idea if Eckhart Tolle and Sid ever met?
No, so I don't think they met, but I know that David Banks said he thought if they had met, they would have had a very good conversation, given
Yeah,
what
I'm sure they would have. I'm sure they would have, yeah. Anyway, but that whole thing of like, I'm so sick of myself. It's like, who's the self that can make a comment on the self? So
Yeah.
that's really eye-opening to me.
And you hear it in that language. You know, myself, my ring, my jumper, my wife, my voice, my body, my thoughts, my feelings, mine, mine, not me, mine. Whose thoughts am I talking about? My thoughts. Whose feelings? My feelings. Whose jumper? My jumper. We use the same language to describe inanimate objects that we claim ownership over as we do for our thoughts and feelings and experiences. Mine. Okay, so my ego. Mine. Mine. I own it. It's not who I am. I'm not this jumper. I'm not this ring because it's mine. I'm not it. It's clearly not me. It's clearly not me. And we use the same language to describe our experiences of life. We own them. They're not who and what we are. Which then leads the intellect to start going into some mad-ass search for, all right, then what is it? Who am I? You can't get there. You cannot think your way there, because to think your way there is to use your thoughts. My thoughts. Back to that conundrum again. But even in our language, we have this knowledge and this awareness at some level of the truth of the fact that we are something greater than the sum total of thoughts and the sum total of feelings and the sum total of experiences and the sum total of matter. Because there's somebody on the planet who owns, you point to something, somebody claims ownership of it. So just having that awareness that I am not my thoughts and feelings, and I even say it in my language, it creates a space from which we can start to open up our mind enough to allow ourselves to go quiet. Because if you notice, when you don't know, when you really truly come to the place of, I don't know, what takes place? There's an opening takes place within our being. There's this opening within our mind where we're going to go, I don't know. There's this emptiness seems to fill us. That emptiness is the space, it's the birthplace for new knowledge. The only thing that keeps us trapped is all the shit we think we already know. I know who they are. I know what they're up to. I know what I'm going to do if that circumstance happens. I know how I'm going to feel. I know what you're thinking. It's all the things that we think that we know that get us stuck. I know so many scientists who, like scientific minds, who think they know stuff. And then they're slowly but surely, like you ask them a question, they'll go, oh, I don't know. All right, so you don't know. And I often think about this man. I've mentioned him before, but he was a man we met at a stone circle up in Scotland called Cairn Holy. And he just said, Mum said, what do you know about it? What do you know about Cairn Holy? And he said, she said, how long has it been here? And he said, well, I know for a fact it was here 10 years ago because I saw it with my own eyes. He said, and I've seen a photograph of it during the Second World War, so I'm pretty sure it was around then. Other than that, I don't know. What do you think? He said. He said, what do you think? He said, because if you look at something long enough, you will learn something. He was one of the greatest scientists that I've ever met. People call him mad. But he was one of the greatest scientists I've ever met. He didn't think he knew anything. His mind was open. I am open. It's our what we think we know that gets us into trouble. I know who I am. I know I have this overactive intellect. No, that's not who and what we are. Whose intellect we're talking about? Mine. My intellect.
You know, what's interesting too is that I think everybody on this call, everybody on any call you've ever had, anybody in the world has experience of pointing in that direction to a child. When a child says, you know, I can't go to school because Johnny's at school, or somebody's going to beat me up, or my teacher's not going to be happy with me, or whatever. Is something a child's limited perspective. We as adults or people who've been around the planet a few more years are able to be kind and gentle and say, I bet it does look like that to you. in some regards, some words. So consider this, or let's try it, or let's, and see if you can try to pry open that child's perspective a little bit, open it up a little bit so they can see that they are a lot more capable than they think they are. And so my point is that we do that so easily and well, typically as adults in children's lives. But sometimes when it comes to our own self, we put the limits back on and we become 5 years old and we
Yeah.
don't trust that, there's something over and above and beyond. We don't see that when you say it's my sweater, or I call it a sweater, you call it a jumper, but I my piece of clothing, that who's the my that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that. And like I said, for me, I always get a lot out of the fact that when I'm learning a new concept or I'm learning something interesting like this, I'm stretching my mind, stretching my heart, stretching my senses a little bit. I always say, "Oh yeah, I've done that before. I've parented. I've, I've been a teacher. I've been a guide for children." And so, oh yeah. So I always that when I make those connections, it feels powerful to me. Like I've been this path before. I can do this again. Yeah.
Nice, Wendy.
Can I ask you something?
Louise, go.
I have a 13-year-old son, and he just got his grade yesterday. And he has been, I don't know if it's struggling at school because he's very wise, or I don't know how you say it, how to say it. He's very clever, and he gets bored a lot when he is at school. And I don't really know what to do. I have talked to his teachers since he was 4th grade. Now he is at 8th. And nothing happens. So he have to go to school and yeah. Because he has to. So
Sorry for I'm reining my ego in. I've got so many comments about schooling systems, but they're just my opinions, and I'm just laughing because I was thinking, oh God, don't start, Ellery.
it's I'm a high school teacher, so I can see that he is very clever than his age. But if we have to live here in this small town, there is only one school. There are no other options, and we like to be here, and he likes to be here. So he has 2.5 more years to be at school where he has to. But I don't know what to do. It didn't help when I talked to the teachers. And
Have you talked to him?
yeah, I talked to him about how it is, and I know that he says it gets very boring because many of the things they are having at school he already knows. But I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do.
Has he got any ideas of what would help him?
What?
Does he have ideas of things that may help him?
I don't think so. He could maybe have more challenge.
I think the only thing that occurs to me is I've got a friend whose son told him at 12 he didn't want to be in school anymore. He wanted to be homeschooled. So his dad said, well, write me an essay about why.
Mm.
Thought the essay was amazing and he totally understood. So he said, okay. And then he did homeschool for a year. And then he just said, Dad, I don't want to learn this information. It's outdated. And his dad said, okay, well, write me another essay kind of thing, explaining, telling me in more detail. And he said he couldn't argue with it. So it all came from his son and sort of the interaction with his son. And then he was, I think by the time he left school, he would have been like 13. He was very interested in certain studies. So he got into Bitcoin, he wanted to be an entrepreneur, he started developing apps. But it just really, the thing that really struck me about my friend was that he got really interested in his son. Like, well, what's going on for you? What do you think will be helpful? Okay, talk me through that. Tell me why. And he really pulled from his son's wisdom. And actually, like, this kid is flying now. He's got his own YouTube channel. He's being flown out to Bali because he's developed some kind of app with his brother. His brother had been like straight A student, GCSE, straight A student, A level, got into an amazing uni, got to uni and was like, what am I doing here? I don't want to work for anybody else. I want to be an entrepreneur. Went into business with his brother, who was like, I think 3 or 4 years younger than him. And they've just like
Within the first year, they'd made over 100,000, hadn't they? And were they 14
and I want to say 18, 19. Yeah, I'm not sure of the ages. But what struck me about that was just that really he has got so much wisdom within him, like for life and for what's helpful. And it might be for him, I need to speak to my teachers and actually ask them, can I go up a grade? Can I have more work? Or I'm interested in this, and there'll be something that's available. Like, but we end up thinking, well, it's only this option for 2.5 years now, and we get really fixed in how we see things. And the thing is, it's that we live in unlimited potential. So there's unlimited things that could be possible for your son, even in your village, even at his age. So I feel like within yourself, seeing when you've kind of created that idea of it's either this or that, or there is only this, and seeing that as, well, that's a thought created like trap. So seeing that in yourself and sort of being more open again and a bit like, what else? And then doing the same with your son. I don't know, who knows what you may come up with.
I remember when Jen and I were out in Johannesburg, I've mentioned this before, but hit me like a ton of bricks. It really upset me, to be honest. We were doing some work in this Jewish community called Glen Hazel in Johannesburg, and this lady said, would I speak to her son? She said, I don't want to put him on medication. It was
8.
He was 8. He was called Gabriel. Beautiful, beautiful little kid. And the fact she said, I don't want to put him on medication, like that community is heavily medicated. Like, it was one of the things we noticed is a massive amount of medication taken in that community. And this lady said to me, she said, I spoke to her, I said, why would you medicate him? Why it's not a medical matter. She was saying he couldn't sleep. It's not a medical matter. And she said, Dave, and she looked around the room, and with 30 kids, tweens, between the ages of 8 and 13, what they call tweens. And she looked around the room and she said, I know every single one of these kids personally, Dave. I know their families. She went round the room again. She went, 95% of these kids are on Ritalin. I said, what? Looking around at all these beautiful little kids, these perfect little kids, perfect little children. Why? She said, well, they're not concentrating at school and, not getting the grades that they should be. And I stopped and I looked at this mother. I said, are they interested? I said, are they interested in what they're learning? I said, because if I'm not interested in something, I said, I won't pay a blind bit of attention. I said, why would I? I said, but that's not a psychological illness. That's not a medical matter. And I remember just looking at all these poor kids trapped in this bullshit system. A system where we're trying to create a funnel to pass every single soul. Don't forget, human beings are spiritual. Human beings are spiritual beings, every single one of us. And none of us come into this world with the same likes. Okay, we all come in with our own unique talents and gifts. I used to look back at my life. I look at my life. I grew up in school and went to school. I went to college. I failed my college course. I didn't do very well in school. And I grew up thinking I was stupid. I grew up believing I was thick. I wasn't good enough. I believed I wasn't good enough because of a schooling system that ranked me with letters at that time. They ranked me with letters. They graded my mind with letters. And I believed that those letters represented me. And other people looked at those letters and believed they represented me. You can't grade intellect. You can't measure intellect. You can't measure intelligence. Intelligence is what everything is made from. You cannot measure it. You measure intelligence, you measure God. Impossible to measure. Impossible to measure. However, put me in front of something that I'm interested in. Put me in front of something that makes my heart sing. Put me in front of something that brings me to life. I'll excel. I'll become a genius. I will study it out of my own volition. I will designate my earth-bound existence. I'll give it time. I'll give it attention. And that's all of us. That's all of us. We're all the same. I remember saying to my nephew, he was 7 or 8 at the time, and he thought he was thick because he didn't do very well at school. This boy was so heartfelt, so one of the most wonderful souls I've ever met in my life. It broke my heart to hear him saying he's stupid. He has gifts. He can communicate with people not in this dimension. He gets messages for people. Yeah, Dad, this is what so-and-so said. And they're accurate. And the person who listens, they know what it means. It means nothing to him. But he's got this deep connection to something, a real gift. And I remember just saying to him, all right, what are you interested in? He went, Pokemon. All right, cool, Pokemon. I said, who's the best out of Pokemon in this car? There was you, me, and him. Who's the best of Pokemon in this car? Me. Yeah. Pokemon, you're a genius. In this car, you excel at Pokemon because you enjoy it, because you love it, because you find it fun. You see, I always think it's not the kid that should get the label of whatever labels they want to label kids nowadays because of how they do at school. I think it's the schooling system that needs to get the label, not the child. The child's perfect. The only problem is the child is being forced to learn stuff that most fucking kids aren't interested in. It's not based in heartfelt learning anymore. I know your mum and dad fell out with schooling because the national curriculum came in and they were forced to teach this certain way, and bit by bit creativity got taken out, your mum says.
Yeah, like creativity, even like sport and
Sport,
all those
it all
things.
became very intellectual and academic. Now, of course, a human being is going to suffer when they start to just spend their time in their head. We're not designed to just spend our time in our heads, but we're being encouraged to, and in some cases, really, really, really encouraged to spend time in our heads for long periods of time at a young age. It's bullshit. Yeah, I told you. I told you it's coming
You've
out.
sit on the fence with this
Yeah, I'm
one.
going to sit on the fence. It's bullshit. Schooling of the future will have to be heart-led. What are you interested in? Now, I think that can start now. Like our friends' kids. All right, what's making your heart sing? I want to do this, I want to do that.
I mean, I think my friend really, he says he was in a privileged position
Yeah.
where he was at home and he was able to, and at actually that age he could be at home, but he was at home and he was able to parent that. If that same child had said it in another family, it may not have physically been possible in that way. But there's still other ways. There's still other potentials and possibilities. But he really acknowledges that he was in a very privileged position to be
Yeah.
able to, like, yeah, go for it, go for it.
Yeah. Sadly, the system that we as human beings are kind of born into is one that takes up an awful lot of our time. You know, just to afford to be able to live under a roof. It's insane. The system that we've created as human beings is insanity. But I think in the not too distant future, we'll start to look at all this stuff and create new. It's had its time. It's totally had its time. It's done now. And then there's kids who do very well at school, like my nephew's sister, who did very well at school. She enjoyed the learning.
Well, I don't know. She had a lot of like she said, she had a lot of ego about doing well.
She was very good at doing
So
well.
she found it easy. It came easy to her, but she had a lot of ego about doing well. But it's fascinating because it's all about I'm going to do so well. And I'm going to do A levels and I'm going to go to uni. She's now decided. She was working when she was doing her A levels in a really nice like hotel restaurant kind of place over in Suffolk, and they've seen potential in her and said we want to move you towards being a manager. So she's agreed to go on that track. So she's not going to university. I think she got one of her A levels because she actually had no work. She was just fed up with it. But it was interesting because she naturally is very good at all these kind of things, but she's realised I spent 5 years putting so much pressure on myself, and I don't even need it. She didn't need GCSEs even to get the job that she had. She was just being a waitress, but they've seen something in her, potential within her. So it's fascinating watching like all three of them, and one of them is just was just amazing at sport and amazing at art, but struggled with all the other things, but pushed and pushed and pushed to get the grades, but had a miserable in lots of ways 5 years. And it's some children just seem to like my cousin's little girl, or big girl now. She didn't take it all too seriously. She did her best and didn't, she enjoyed being with her friends, and she really enjoyed and looks back at her time in secondary school as being fun. She did her best and her best was good enough and she didn't overthink it. So there is that group of kids that go through, but there's so many struggling and there's so many miserable, unhappy school refusers, kids getting labelled, kids getting medicated. So it is such a narrow fit. The whole system is a very narrow fit.
It's a very narrow fit.
And it's taught that it means so much about you, and it means so much about the rest of your life. And I think
they scare the crap out of kids.
Like they basically say, if you don't do well, you're going to end up on the streets. That's kind of the message you get. What I got when I was in school.
That's what I got. That's
My
what I
nieces said
came
they
out
got.
Oh God, I'm going to end up a bloody junkie. Which I did anyway.
Did not.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
I said today, some makes jokes, but people don't know they're jokes. You should clarify.
They're the best jokes.
When I saw his grade yesterday, I was a little shocked because I knew he was much better than the grades. But I told him anyway that no matter what, I love him. I mean,
Good.
And I knew that he had this national test this summer, and he got A in math. And in English also he got an A also. So he's interested in those and physics. But writing reading, he doesn't want to at all. And
There you go.
and so he got a new teacher, and I see that he got D in math, and I was like, what? And he told me that he tells me almost every week that he gets bored, so he doesn't want to do anything because he already have learned it, and he has to do it over and over again, even though he has learned it. So he doesn't want to. He doesn't have any motivation any longer. I don't know if it's because he's a teenager now also. I don't know. But yeah. I have talked to him about he only has 2.5 years left at school.
Isn't it sad? Isn't it sad we have to say that? Don't worry, you'll soon be out of this bullshit.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's just some bullshit you have to go through because you chose to incarnate on Earth.
Yeah.
Sad.
So
There's some wonderful things. Do you know what I mean? It's great that I learned to read and write to whatever degree I learned to read and write. Not very well. You know, and to a certain degree, I learned some cool stuff. 99% of stuff I learned at school does not apply to my life. Doesn't apply to my life. But I remember just going back to that point where I thought I was unintelligent. I remember when I desperately wanted to get out of tree surgery. I remember going, what have I got? What have I got? What have I got that I can create a new line of work from? I've got a chainsaw certificate. Well, that only really applies to cutting wood. I can climb with a rope and harness with a chainsaw. Well, that just really applies to cutting trees. And I got a wood chipper ticket. And so that really only applies to trees. Shit, I'm stuck in trees. What other gifts do I have? I was racking my brain. What other gifts do I have? And the only other thing I could come up with was I can talk to people. I can communicate with people. I feel comfortable communicating. That was the only thing I could come up with, my only gift I could really find. My gift is I can communicate with people. And I thought, well, what bloody good's that then? What good's that? That's no good. How am I supposed to make money from being able to speak to people? And lo and behold, not too long later, I'm talking to people and I'm being paid for it. You know, I started to use my gift that I was gifted with.
I think it's my sister's really got into the home education stuff, and she's a teacher. My parents are teachers, my auntie's teacher. Like, I come from a family of teachers, at primary and secondary. And but even when you were speaking, it's like you can see we still have the idea that doing well, like an A, is a good thing, and a D is not such a good thing. Like we've fully bought into the idea of grading on certain things as being good and successful or not. And my sister said it's been so weird with her son to have to kind of back away from teaching and back away from trying to get him to learn things. But actually, when she hangs out with him and is just without agenda, there's learning opportunities all the time, and he's learning. That learning is inherent to us; it's what we do. But we kind of have this idea that there's a certain way to learn, and there's certain places we need to go to learn. And like my mum and dad have really struggled with it. They're like, he needs to be doing more of this, and he needs to be doing more of that, and he's not being home educated, and it's not enough. And I don't know, it's been really interesting for me because I feel myself kind of getting into both worlds, and I see both sides, but I also see he's just a human being who he's going to create something beautiful with his life. Like all of the boys actually in that family really struggled with dyslexia and school and not wanting to do it. And each of them now, his older brothers are in their late 20s and one of them's 30. They're doing fantastically well at things you'd know. Like one of them's into cryptocurrencies and something, and the other one loves fishing, and is he becoming an electrician?
Something like that.
Something, yeah.
But
He's doing some
just
kind of apprenticeship.
Wonderful human
Just
beings, aren't they?
incredible human beings, but
Yeah.
they didn't fit into that. And I think it's been quite interesting because I remember my nephew saying he'd been at forest school and he was going 2 days a week, and he said he felt more clever in the 2 weeks he'd been at forest school than he had in his entire time at school.
That's right.
And he enjoys it. And he comes back and he's got stories to tell you, and he's interested. And I know he's fine. He's amazing at karate. Like he's just,
And chess.
yeah. But it's this idea, and I can hear it and I see it in myself, like this idea of grading. Has that been a really good thing? Like when my niece told her, my oldest niece told us her grades, you're like, oh wow, that's amazing. You've done so well, it's great. And you get so much praise for her high number. And we kind of commiserate on low numbers as if it actually means something.
As if it's representative of who and what that individual is.
But it's weird because it's like you're having to get out of this idea that we've been born into and indoctrinated into. And I think there's a place for it. I'm glad that people who, did my C-section had studied and knew what they were doing. So there's a place for it, but it feels like we have to open our minds again and think again for all of those individual children. Like, how can we serve them? And I know there are certain systems like the Montessori and Steiner, and I think they're more child-led and things, but I feel like something new needs to happen. I feel like it's happening. I think different communities are starting to, different schools are emerging, like free schools and things.
And so many kids are refusing to go to school.
Yeah.
When kids start refusing to go to school, there's a problem brewing. Do you know what I mean? But the thing is, us human beings are genius. We will figure out something different. We will figure out a new system. Because if it stopped working, it stopped working. You know what I mean? I don't think we'll try and stick a bandage on the last one and try and patch it up, because we knew it was bollocks. It worked to a certain degree. It worked for a certain amount of people, but it doesn't work for enough people. So I think I don't know. Coming back to your question, I suppose, as a mum, what should you do? I don't know. I don't know. But the fact that you are loving him when he perhaps feels less than what he feels like he should be, which he isn't, and he never can be, and he never, ever, ever, ever will be, God bless his little heart, is wonderful.
Yeah, how many kids get beaten or punished? So even just saying I love you, like, and not judging in that way, that's huge.
And encourage him in his things that he's interested in. What are you interested in? All right. How can I help facilitate you, my son, in learning about what you're interested in? Because
When I said that I loved him anyway, I mean, even though he got those grades, he was like, I'm glad that we are not living in an Asiatic country like Japan, or I don't know where he have to be good and get some grades. And he was joking, but he was happy that, yeah, I will love him no matter what.
Yeah.
And I know he is clever. I know he is a very good person. And yeah, so
I also think these kids are going to grow up in a different world. The kids aren't going to grow up in the world we've grown up in. Like, I don't grow up in the world my parents grew up in. And my parents don't grow up in the world that their parents grew up in. You know, they're going to grow up in their world. And us, older people, looking at them, and I'm not saying anybody on this screen, but us looking at our children and going, oh, you should be more like this or more like that. We're basing that information on the past. There's a beautiful poem. If you don't mind, I'm going to read it. Because this to me sums up parenting, and it sums up children, and it sums up life to such a massive degree. Forgive me, I'm just finding it. It's just going. There's a few lines in this that just, I think they're wonderful. Your children are not your children. I'll start again. It paused. Sorry, my apologies. Are we cutting out every now and again? No, okay. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. For life goes not backward, nor tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children, as living arrows, are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness, for even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves also the bow that is stable. That's Cahill Gibran. That was Cahill Gibran on children, it's called. But I love that. You may house their bodies, but not their souls. For their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow. They're the most latest version of consciousness. They're the most latest update of human consciousness, are the children. And what have we been doing with our educational system and the way that we speak to them much of the time? We have been giving them yesterday's information. Like our friend's children said, I don't want to learn this. It's redundant information. He knew fine well, no, this is dead information. This is going to be proven to be all wrong as I go through my life. This is going to be proven to be false. All this science, all this, that, and the other, we're going to improve on it. We're going to realize different things. I remember being taught the Newtonian atom at school. And I was going, is that actually what it looks like? I got thrown out. She said to me, and I love this lady dearly. She died, God bless her. I love it. After I left school, I loved her dearly. But she said, are you questioning my teaching methods? I said, no. I said, but is that actually what an atom looks like? And she went, get out. And I had to go and stand outside. I actually went to the headmaster and said, do you know, I've just been kicked out. I've been kicked out because I questioned what an atom looks like. But later on, and to this, when I've looked into physics, quantum physics now, it's like they speak about atoms as not being like this solar system of a nucleus with electrons or whatever going around it, but being more akin to a ball of shimmering energy, of vortices springing up from nothing, coming into being. And that's our current understanding of atoms. Now that can change. Do you know what I mean? But I'm not going back too long, and I believe that in some places they're still teaching Newtonian atoms. And so the information that we're giving to a lot of these kids is redundant already. And if we can start to see our kids differently, and if we can start to see them as they are the most updated version of human consciousness, when I read that poem, I thought, that's how I want to parent. I want to learn from Lucia. Like Archie, I've laid down with Archie in bed, and as he's going to sleep, and I've just spoken to him, and I'm like, Arch, do you know what? Our nephew who thought he was thick, I'm like, I look up to you, mate. I look up to you. I see you as somebody who has so much to offer me personally. I know I'm a lot older than you, mate, but there is something inside you that I think is beautiful. And I'm in awe of you. And I mean it. And it's like I look at Lucia, and she can have a little tantrums, and she can be a little so-and-so at times. But I know that in that girl is a potentials that need to come into this world. They need to be expressed in this world. Otherwise, she wouldn't have taken form. She's come into this world full laden with potential of what she wants to experience in her life. And she is entitled to experience her life. Just like I am, just like we all are. And I hope that I hope I can do my best not to stifle her creativity. Now, it's mine and Jen's personal choice at this present moment, as we are thinking right now as it sits, that we won't be sending Lucia to school. Just because of everything we've learnt through working in school, working with children, seeing the amount of depression in school, working out in Nepal, working in the foothills of the Himalayas, where the most substantial building in the village was the school built by Western people. Because every kid deserves an education. Every kid deserves. I believed that. Until I went to the foothills of the Himalayas, and we were 2,500, 3,000 meters up on top of this little mountain compared to the Himalayas, still bloody high up, miles away from anywhere. And these kids are going to school, and they're learning stuff. And they get into 16, and they're like, congratulations, you finished school. And they walk out of school, and they go, I finished school. Right, great, now what? Oh, I live in the foothills of the Himalayas. I live in a tiny self-sufficient village. We grow our own vegetables. We pump our water up from a stream down the bottom of the valley. I live in a mud hut. I live in a mud house with a straw roof. But I've got this education. I've got this promise of this, because I've got this education, I've got this promise of this great life I can have. But my whole family lives in this remote village. To fulfill this promise, I have to leave my beautiful family. And I end up in Dubai or Abu Dhabi or Kathmandu or, I don't know, somewhere in India, some big city in India, away from my family. And one of the reasons we ended up going to work in the foothills of the Himalayas was because there was a massive problem with child suicide. That's when I really started to question what is important about children. What's important about life? It's love. It's the people around us. It's the love for loving what we do. And that is when I decided for myself that no, not every child needs an education. No, they don't. Some cultures just need leaving the hell alone because they're beautiful already and they have
Well,
everything that they need.
depends on what you mean by education, right? The word education. Yeah, I agree with you. It doesn't need you guys must know this story about the Mexican fisherman and the American investment banker.
Yeah, I was trying to tell it the other day, but I really fucked it up. Carry on.
Yeah, want me to tell it? It's right here. It's like
Do it.
2 minutes. An American investment banker was at a pier of a small coastal Mexican village when a small boat with just one fisherman docked. Inside the small boat were several large yellowfin tuna. The American complimented the Mexican on the quality of his fish and asked how long it took him to catch. The Mexican replied, "Only a little while." The American then asked why didn't he stay out longer and catch more fish? The Mexican said he had enough to support his family's immediate needs. The American then asked, "But what do you do with the rest of your time?" The Mexican fisherman said, "I sleep late, fish a little, play with my children, take siestas with my wife Maria, stroll into the village each evening where I sip wine, and I play guitar with my amigos. I have a full and busy life." The American scoffed. "I'm a Harvard MBA and I could help you. You should spend more time fishing and with the proceeds buy a bigger boat. With the proceeds from the bigger boat, you could buy several boats. Eventually, you would have a fleet of fishing boats. Instead of selling your catch to a middleman, you could sell directly to the processor, eventually opening your own cannery. You would control the product, processing, and the distribution. You would need to leave this small coastal village and move to Mexico City, then LA, and then eventually to New York City, where you run your expanding enterprise." The Mexican fisherman asked, "But how long will all that take?" And to which the American replied, 15, 20 years. "But what then?" asked the Mexican. "What then?" asked the Mexican. The American laughed and said, "That's the best part. When the time is right, you would announce an IPO and sell your company stock to the public and become very rich. You'll make millions. Millions. Then what?" The American said, well, then you'd retire, move to a small coastal fishing village where you would sleep late, fish a little, play with your kids, take siestas, and your wife, take siestas with your wife, stroll to the village in the evenings where you could sip wine and play your guitar with your amigos.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
So good. Yep.
Such an interesting thing. And, you know, it's a mentality that when I came out of it, because it took me, I was well into my adulthood when I came out of that mentality, that striving for success mentality. You know, you still see it, the people that are chasing the dream. It started in school. It started with when we get those grades, and now it's when I get that house. It's when I get that job promotion. It's when I find myself. I find my spiritual self. You know, it's when I've overcome this intellect. It's when I've raised my level of consciousness. It's when I've got that new partner. When I've updated the car and I've got that new car. The only thing that is dissatisfied is the ego. The only thing that judges anything is the ego. You know, as an adult, to wake up and realize
No, but
all
today's
made up.
is it pork?
But you were Jewish when? No, you can eat pork.
Oh, did you just hear me say pork? Oh, my husband just took something out of the freezer and I'm like, is it pork? I don't want to eat pork. No, I'm not. My stomach doesn't like pork.
No, okay. Mine
My
doesn't
stomach is Jewish. My stomach is Jewish.
either. My taste buds are as well now.
Yeah, right. Sorry about that.
My nose isn't. My nose still really likes the smell of bacon cooking.
Mm.
But no, that whole achievement model, we carry it through life. You know, unless we realize it's flawed by its very presence. You know, and we start to realize that everything we are looking for in searching and striving and trying to achieve anything, we've already got it, like the fisherman coming in with his little boat of fish. We've already got everything we need. It was always there.
Mhm.
You know, you want a more peaceful mind, you can have it. You've already got it. The only thing that thinks you haven't is the only thing that creates the illusion that you haven't is the thinking that you haven't.
Mhm. Right.
Do you know what I mean? The only thing that believes it's imperfect is the very thought that thinks it's imperfect. That's not a very accurate statement. The only thing that creates the illusion of imperfection is the thought of the imperfection.
Right. Or the thought that there is a perfect and everything else needs to chase it.
Yeah. You see, to me, everything has to be perfect because it is what it is. Without judgment, you're just left with what is. If we start to, like, I remember Sid saying, if you can see the object without the emotion, then you're mentally stable. If you see the circumstance without attaching the emotion to the circumstance, if you can see the circumstance isn't creating your experience, then you are mentally stable. If you attribute your experience to the circumstance, then you've got yourself lost in a dynamic that doesn't actually exist.
Right. Mm.
Yeah, I like that you just read, Wend. I think it's lovely. If you could send me it, I'd really appreciate it.
It's in the chat.
Cool, cool.
I sent the link in the chat, so just make sure you copy it. Yeah. I
Yeah,
know
can
it's
you
pretty.
can you telegram it to me
Yeah.
when you get chance? When you get chance.
I can. Yeah.
Yeah. This, I say every single time I speak to somebody, though, this is the most important thing we could be learning. Because when you start to discover the nature of mind, you realize that the only thing that separates you from an achievement is a thought. Do you know what I mean? Who was it? Henry Ford said, if you believe you can or you believe you cannot, you are correct. You know, it's such a simple and wonderful statement.
Totally.
And that goes for all the kids. You know, I
Mhm.
wasn't particularly good when I used to go into school because I'd say to them, doesn't matter. You'll be absolutely fine regardless of how your schooling shows up. You will be fine. You will find your way. And a lot of teachers didn't particularly like my
No.
statements, but I think
Well,
it's
if I was your teacher, I would say it doesn't matter, not matter. That's what I would say to you.
and then that would make you a racist.
That would make me something. It would make me something. It would make me a snob.
Yeah, not very woke.
What does it matter?
What does it matter?
What does it matter?
I
In
remember.
it. INNIT. In it.
I was just going to say it was something Louise said before about her son getting A in English. I'm like, I don't even know if it's your son's first language. How you doing, buddy? So much love. I'm so proud of you. So proud.
Thanks.
I was just going to say, I don't even know if English is your first language. You probably speak Danish as
It's my third language.
third language,
Oh.
man.
Mhm.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
fine. Fine.
you and you annihilated me in English, and English is my only language.
And my English is my only language. Me too.
I love it. I remember I remember being out in Nepal and we were working in this school in Kathmandu, and we had 2 hours, was it, with these young kids? It was far too long. And I remember standing in the front of the class and I remember saying, right, okay, I just want to run through some words, check you understand. All right, Wend, I hope you understand. Loads of love. Thank you so much for coming. Hope you understand these words. Can we just run through these words and check that you know them? And I'm like, okay. And the first word I said was thought. And they're looking at each other going, thought? Thought? I said, yeah, thought. Thought? Thought? I'm like, yeah. And I started to panic thinking, I've got 2 hours. I'm gonna have to explain to these kids what thought is first. I'm like, oh God. I went, you know, the stuff that runs through your head. And they went, oh, Dave, you mean thought. Yes, you're absolutely correct. I do. I mean thought. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for schooling me on my England. Oh, it was ace. It was ace. And we used to send things off to Nepal to be proofread, didn't we? Because we didn't trust our own English. So we trusted a Nepalese girl who was a genius. But no, I just hope that we can help kids understand that they have everything they need to live the most beautiful life, a life full of heart-filled experiences, because really that's what life is. It's an experience. It's all experience. That's all it is. That's what life itself is. It's an experience. You know, and the more wonderful, heart-filled experiences we get to fill our life with, the more wonderful our life is. And I think it's remembering that. I think it's remembering to tell our kids that, and it's remembering that for ourselves. You know, Jesus was asked the question in the book of Thomas, how do you best serve God? And his answer was very simple. He just said, just do what you enjoy. Do that you love. That's how you best serve God according to Jesus. Just do what you enjoy. Because it's not outside of you. It's the space from which all experience is born. It is the creator. It's the origin. It's the alpha. It's the beginning. It's the end. It's the omega. That's who and what we actually are. And that's really what it all boils down to. I mentioned it a few weeks ago about a lady who I went and fitted some blinds for, helping my dad out. And she spoke about her husband dying and they botched his operation. And they called in the family to come quickly. And he was bleeding out when they got there and he was fully conscious. But they were packing, she said they were packing him full of gauzes. And they knew he was going. That's why they called us in. She said, and 5 of us managed to make it in. And he was bleeding out on this table. And she said he just went round each of us. He said, so-and-so, I love you. So-and so, I love you. So-and so, I love you. All 5 of them. He just said the name and he told them that he loved them. She said, and then he left. I burst into tears. I just started crying at this point. And she said, oh no, she said, you know, she started saying stuff about, oh, I don't need to be upset. I don't need to be upset. I said, no. I said, I'm not. I said, forgive me. I said, I'm not actually crying because your husband died. I said, I'm crying because of what he said. I said, your husband obviously had so many experiences in his life. And she said, yes, he did. He had so many experiences in his life. I said, he could have spoken about anything just before he left. I said, but he didn't. He spoke about something very specific. I said, he spoke about love. His very last words were, I love you. The most important thing he could say in his last moments on this planet. What is the most important thing I could possibly say right now? My last chance, my last breaths. What can I possibly say? What can I say? I love you. And I just remember saying to her, I said, I'm crying because I think he's given us the key to life. Because if that's what it all boils down to in the end, isn't that what the whole thing's about? I'll never forget that story. Love. It has to all boil down to love. Loving ourselves, something that many people find very difficult. There's no reason why anybody should not love themselves. Don't care what they've done in the past. Learn to forgive. Learn to forgive ourselves. Learn to forgive others. Because forgiveness is born of hurt. Non-forgiveness is born of hurt and fear. But forgiveness is born of love. It cultivates love. And learn to follow our hearts. Learn to do things that truly bring us alive, bring us to life, and things that we truly enjoy. Like you often laugh at me. You say I've got some kind of psychological disorder because I love doing something one day and then the next day don't want to do it anymore. I want to do this and I want to do that. And I love different experiences. I love trying different things. But people think I should stick at something. You should stick at something and work at it. I don't want to. I've been there, done that. I'm bored of that now. I want to do something else. Oh, Babby. Oh, it's just about that on to Jen then, but Lucy has just woken up. Oh, little girl. All right. Louise, do you want to say anything, love?
It is wonderful listening to you. And I've heard that story that
Oh,
who was it?
did you hear me just then, Louise?
What?
Could you hear me? Did I freeze?
No, I can hear you.
Oh, you froze, so I carry on.
Ah,
Anything
okay.
you say?
No, I really love listening to you. And it is so wonderful. Like, no matter what grades, no matter how my son is, I'm gonna love him anyway. And I love it. I mean, yeah, I make some mistakes. I know sometimes, but yeah, I just love it. I love listening to the things you say, and it's wonderful. I'm so grateful.
Oh, I'm so grateful you come, love. I'm so grateful you come. And I really am. I really am. And we all make it.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like you look around, everybody's all right. We all make it somehow. We all make it. Now our making it always looks different to everybody else's. Well, it's got to, it has to, because we live different lives,
Hmm.
live different realities. So it's got to look different. But it's
Yeah.
remembering that unbreakable nature of spirit. You know, I love saying to people who come and work with us, they get a bit in their heads for the first day or two, and then later on I'll just ask them, how are you feeling right now? And they'll go, I'm feeling good. Oh, isn't that interesting? Right at the very leading edge of your life, you feel good. Right here, right now. That's all there is. All there is right here, right now is this, I feel good. Right here, right now. It's all that exists. Have you noticed? You notice that's happened? You know, and because so much of the time we spend living in the past and talking about, people can work with us, they'll tell us how they've been. I've been last week, I was so low, and you know, a week before that I was even lower, and oh, and like, yeah, but right now, right here, right now, how are you? Do you know what I mean? And I like to point out to them, as a young girl we've been working with who's just had the most horrible, horrible time, horrible past. I sat on the bed with her the other day, chatting away to her, and I just said, but none of it broke you, did it? I said, here you are, right here, right now. I said, and none of it's broken you. And she just went, no, it hasn't. Nothing breaks us. Nothing breaks us. We cannot be broken. Nobody's ever been broken. They experience low feelings. Yeah, totally. It's not you broken. Like your television screen isn't broken if it starts playing shitty images. And I think when you know that, you start to gain more trust and faith in life. You start to become less afraid of life. And in doing so, you start to live a different life. A life with less fear instantly equals a life of more peace. A life with less fear instantly equals a life with more love.
Mhm.
It's always there. It never went anywhere. Like consciousness going in search of the spirit. This elusive spirit. Oh, what is this elusive spirit? It's like a drop of water going in search of water, or an ocean going in search of the ocean. Oh, there's this ocean thing. I believe I've heard about this ocean thing. I need to find it. I need to find it. Oh, it's going to be amazing. Do you know what this ocean can do? It can wave in any way it so wishes. It's amazing. Know that about ourselves and know that about our kids. Know it about others. Speak to it. Because that's the truth. Broken is the illusion. Damaged is the illusion. Less than enough is the illusion.
Also the future.
Illusion.
Yeah.
Illusion.
That's what I was like caught up in a moment when I saw the great what if, and it's like, oh, relax.
Just all of thoughts running through our head. That's all it was.
Mhm.
All it was. And that's what
Mm.
we're waking up to. That's what it is. It's what we're
Mhm.
starting to wake up to. We're starting to wake up to the notion that everything we think is a creation of our own mind. It's not a reflection of the outside world. It creates the illusion of the reflection of the outside world.
Mm.
You know, we're starting to wake up and realize that as we think, so we experience. Nobody gets taught this in school, do they? Unless they've been had eye heart through or something like that, something wonderful like that. But we're starting to become educated on the nature of ourselves. That's the most important thing we could be educated on. I've met people who have had awakened experiences who live on the streets and they have nothing. And they are some of the most peaceful, wonderful human beings I've ever met in my life. I remember a man in South Africa who'd had a stroke and he lived on the streets. And I gave him some food and I took great pity on him because he was smelly and he couldn't speak, could barely speak, could speak, but I'll do his voice just once so you can get a feel. But he spoke like that. I found it very difficult to understand. And I gave him this food and he could barely walk. When he walked, he had to shuffle. His bum was on the ground and he had food all down himself, which was weeks old, and he had flies all over him and it was filthy. And I gave him this food and he looked up at me and he said, "Thank you," in his voice. I said, "Oh, you're welcome." And then he stopped and he said, "May I ask you your name?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "My name's Dave." And he went, "Dave. Thank you, Dave." I said, "Oh, you're welcome." I said, "May I ask your name?" And he said, "Of course." He said, "My name's Ben." I said, "Nice to meet you, Ben." He said, "Nice to meet you, Dave." And then carried on. He was just staring at me and he went, "Wow." He said, "May I say what a beautiful face of God you are?" I said, "Thank you, Ben." I said, "And may I say the same about you?" And he said, "I know." I'll never forget it. He was physically disabled. He'd had a stroke. He lived on the streets. He had nothing. He was just grateful for my food. And this man shone with a light of love and peace that I didn't have very rarely come across an able-bodied person having experienced. You know, a person with a roof over their head or anything like that, money in the bank. And I remember I sat down with this man, I spoke to him, I fell in love with this man, and this man just emanated love. He was just the most peaceful, and everybody walked past, "Hello," waved and smiled at them and carried on talking to me and chatted to him. And I got up to leave and I emptied all my money out of my wallet. I had about 60 UK pounds in rand. And I went to give him it and he just pushed it back and he went, "No, Dave, do you not see? It's not about money. It's not about that. It's about us. It's about people." And that was,
Wow.
I just burst into tears. I just burst into tears and walked up to the car and cried for so long that Ben had walked up the street, waddled up the street, and he looked through the window and saw Jenny. And he just shook his head and put his head down and went, "Wow, such beauty." He said, "Such beauty." Just saw beauty everywhere. You know, and if it was true that circumstance creates our feelings and experience, that man, I'm sure, would have to live in the darkest hell. He didn't. Which points that it's not outside, it's within.
Mhm.
It's within. And that's what we're starting to wake up to. That this isn't just some fanciful idea, it's the actual truth about life. Thank God. I have a say over my own mind. I don't have a say over the world. I have a say. Do I believe that thought? Do I trust that thought? Am I going to run with that thought? Is that thought going to get me anywhere good? I have some say over that. But I don't have any say over what other people do. Louise, thank you so much for being here till the end.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. It was what a wonderful story you told me. And
Oh, he was a wonderful man.
it is wonderful. I also remember when I was younger and I didn't have much money, but I had enough to travel the world and just enough. And it was wonderful. And I didn't have much, but I really enjoyed it. I had a great time, and yeah, I just really recalled. I remember it now again. It's wonderful.
I love it because that's what's important in life. I think my friend once said to me, he said, you know, when you're on your deathbed, he said, I'm sure it won't be how much money I've got in the bank. And I even think he said about his grades in education because is an extremely educated academic man. He said, I don't think he said my grades, education. He said, it won't be the money I've got in the bank. He said, it won't be my car that I'll look back on and be grateful for. He said, it'll be my experiences,
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
that's what's important.
Mhm.
How much joy, how much love can I live from?
Yeah.
Cool, love. Right. Hopefully next week we're going to go back to Monday, all being well.
Yeah.
Just going to do my businessy bit one last time, but just if you wish to make a donation, if this has been of any use to you and you find benefit in these videos, perhaps you couldn't make it here tonight and you're finding these on YouTube and you're finding them useful or of benefit, please consider making a donation to Jenny and I, which is PayPal info@freedomthinking.co.uk. And that is also our email address. I'll put it in the link description below. Look like I know what I'm doing now. And also like, subscribe and comment if you could. That would be wonderful because I believe that helps us out on YouTube. All right. God bless everyone. And thank you all so much for watching.